Well, hey everybody, what do Burger King receipts, Walgreens flip-flops, and missing phone data have in common? Well, they all helped unravel Lori Daybell's defense on day 6 in her Arizona murder trial for the murder of her husband, fourth husband, Charles Vallow. So in this gripping episode, we're going to walk through every explosive moment during the testimony, from the GPS data that placed Lori Daybell miles away from the murder scene before the 911 call to her bizarre courtroom behavior as she acts as her own attorney. Was Lori trying to control the narrative once again, or is this all part of a larger manipulative pattern in her doomsday beliefs? Well, hey everybody, welcome to Profiling Evil. I'm here in the mountains. I had to just get away again. I got so much to do, and I wanted to make sure that I weighed in on the testimony during day 6 in the murder trial. This is a place where we dig deep into the facts of these cases, and we try to break down the psychology behind the crimes. So if you're into true crime without the nonsense, please hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell. Make sure you've got your notifications turned on, and please consider sharing Profiling Evil with your friends. And for those of you who are interested, I do release earlier videos for those who are part of my channel memberships. So go over and sign up for a channel membership. I really do appreciate the support. Well, this trial is more than just a trial about murder. It's about delusion, deception, and digital footprints that don't lie. And since day 6 includes testimony about Burger King, I can't pass up the chance to start with a little BK analogy, because this was a testimony served up with a whopper of courtroom drama, complete with surveillance footage, GPS timelines, and one very suspicious trip to Burger King. But the real main course in this case is the gut punch that Lori Vallow received from the digital evidence, the witness insights, and the legal theater that was going on, starring none other than Lori Vallow Daybell herself, representing, well, herself. So if you're just joining this circus, Lori Daybell stands accused of conspiring to murder her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, back in July of 2019. And in true Doomsday fashion, she opted once again to ditch professional counsel in favor of playing attorney on her own. In fact, what it really did was give her the stage and a little bit of something breaking up her prison lifestyle. But here's the spoiler alert. Things aren't going well, in my opinion. And today, a bag of fast food may have just delivered the biggest blow to her defense yet. Now, things kicked off with some procedural drama. Lori, again acting as her own attorney, stood up to discuss a subpoena issue that was brought up by the prosecution. Essentially, she blindly signed legal documents. She issued subpoenas to witnesses that were never meant to be called. People like Charles's relatives, Robert Vallow and Larry Woodcock. Now, Lori tried to clean it up by simply apologizing to the court, saying, hey, it was an oversight. But the damage was already done. And the prosecution used this moment to quietly underscore a broader theme, that Lori isn't just legally unqualified, she's reckless. Her actions didn't just highlight incompetence, they bordered on harassment of grieving family members in this case. Now, in my opinion, it was an early win for the prosecution. Again, pointing out Lori's inability to handle even basic court procedures, planting seeds of doubt about whether she could have managed anything, including this criminal case. But could she have managed the seriousness around Charles' death without leaving all kinds of clues? And in my opinion, this was a missed opportunity by the prosecutors where they could have really hammered home the possibility that Lori's subpoena stunt may have been another manipulative tactic, all designed to rattle the family. But once the courtroom drama began, the prosecution put Detective Inklin back on the stand to talk about what I call the calm after the kill. According to Inklin, Lori didn't appear shaken by the fact that her husband had just been gunned down by her brother. Instead, she chatted easily with police. She withheld important facts, and she failed to mention key evidence, according to the detective. Now, the detective described how Lori could have de-escalated this entire argument simply by giving Charles back his phone, but instead, she doubled down and she allowed the tensions to rise. So the question is, was it purposeful? Because it ultimately ended in Charles's death. Now, in my opinion, this was a win for the prosecution, who portrayed Lori as someone who was indifferent to what was going on and emotionally detached from what was going on. The testimony subtly suggested that Lori's failure to mention Charles's phone or to cooperate fully showed possible deceit, and it certainly showed some obstruction, and that added fuel to the theory that this wasn't a chaotic domestic violence event. It was a planned murder. And I think the prosecution could have pushed a little harder on how Daybell was completely outside of the realm of normality. I mean, why didn't she call 911? Why did she casually swing through Burger King and Walgreens? I mean, sure, the kids probably needed shoes right then, and they certainly needed breakfast. But it seems that the murder of her husband, their father, should have been right up there with the, hey, I ought to call 911 thing on her list of priorities. The prosecution hinted at this, but they didn't drive it home with the weight that it deserved. And when Lori cross-examined the detective, she had what I might consider a minor win when she pointed out that she had voluntarily come into the police department, that she voluntarily turned over Charles's phone, of course, after she was asked about it, and after she and Alex had it for about 2 hours. But then she went off the rails when she objected to her own questions, asking rhetorical and irrelevant kinds of questions about the Arizona heat, what the temperature on the sidewalk was, and whether the kids needed flip-flops, and repeatedly had to be corrected by the judge. Now, her attempts to question the detective often turned into kind of a self-serving monologue, where she drew constant objections from the prosecution, many of which were sustained by the judge. And the judge, in my opinion, seems to be losing his patience with the defendant. His tone was turning a little colder. His patience seemed a little thinner. And it was clear that Lori's courtroom antics were wearing down everybody in the courtroom, and probably each of you if you watched any of this testimony. But the question becomes, how's the jury taking all this? I mean, are they seeing the same out-of-control person that we see? So the jury, rather than seeing a wrongly accused victim who's fighting for herself, might probably be seeing a woman who's trying to manipulate the system with charm and confusion. But things in the drive-through lane were only starting to heat up now, because the next prosecution witness was Detective Werther. A digital guillotine was going to drop here because Werther dropped bomb after bomb. GPS data, surveillance footage, all showing that Lori left the scene of Charles's shooting far earlier than she claimed. She and her daughter Tylee were seen at Burger King. They think they saw JJ in there as well, and it would only make sense. But they were seen at Burger King at 7:54 a.m., a full 42 minutes before Alex Cox called 911 to report the shooting, and that happened at 8:36 a.m. Now, Werther also revealed that Lori leisurely visited the Walgreens at about 8:19 a.m. So this is on the way to school, and she was there to buy some flip-flops. She wasn't rushing out to the police. She wasn't packing. She was shopping. And here's the kicker. Werther confirmed that Charles's phone, which had been left at the scene earlier, somehow reappeared back at the house by 8:48 a.m. And this can only suggest one thing, that someone deliberately returned it, muddying the waters of evidence. Which brings us to another place in which I think the prosecution scored a win. They made it devastatingly clear that the forensic timeline contradicted everything that Lori was saying in her version of events. Now, the investigator backed up everything he had with video and GPS data. It removed all ambiguity in this case. Now, the data was fact. Lori Vallow Daybell's description of what happened appears to be fiction. The prosecution also showed that Lori was somebody who wasn't reacting to a tragedy. Rather, she was kind of coolly maneuvering her way through the morning's events. And again, I do think the prosecution missed an opportunity to press a little bit harder, especially on the emotional and psychological dissonance that they were witnessing. This wasn't about the timing alone. It was about behavior, and that behavior screams guilt. And when Lori tried to cross-examine the forensic phone expert, she appeared even more disorganized than in the investigator's questioning. She appeared even desperate, in my opinion. She veered off into questions about Charles dating other women and all kinds of irrelevant financial claims, most of which the judge quickly shut down, but she still was able to get it heard by the jury. She failed to challenge any of Werther's actual findings, though, so it was a clear win for the prosecution and an absolute loss for Lori Daybell. Now, it was clear to me that Lori is still continuing to try to control the courtroom, despite her lack of skill set. It didn't appear that she was winning over the jury, in my opinion, but I didn't see the jury. Conversation that I've heard on court TV and other places suggests that the jury isn't buying it. She did get a moment of reprieve, though, during the lunch hour, a time to regroup and hopefully get it her way. Oh, and before I forget, I'd like to point out that Lori attempted to introduce a statement, I guess her form of evidence in this case, that Charles had sent her threatening messages that she never reported. But again, there was no evidence to support that, so the story fell flat, especially when the detective was questioned by her about those. Now, the detective said she didn't personally review the phone or the texts, and that it was handed over to the computer crimes unit. This opened the door for the detective to remind the jury that she saw discrepancies in Lori's testimony and in her timeline, but she failed to press Lori during the interviews. So in my opinion, day 6 was a tough day for Lori Daybell. Jurors likely saw through the superficial charm and the disorganization, the cold facts of the GPS data, the surveillance video. Those are impossible to ignore. And Lori's inability to counter them, combined with her kind of bizarre courtroom behavior, detours everybody. But it might also be sealing her fate, because rather than being a grieving widow, she appears to be a calculating conspirator, a woman trying to play lawyer while the weight of justice is closing in around her. And as I sit here in this beautiful setting, thinking about her drive through the Burger King window drive-through, knowing that her husband had just been murdered, I can't help but add, again, one more touch of sarcasm to my closing thoughts on this video. Because if this trial had been held in that same Burger King drive-through, the prosecution, in my opinion, just placed a perfectly stacked Whopper with an order of extra pickles, and by the way, hold the BS, on top of Lori Vallow's plate. And Lori seemed to be placing her order with hopes for a free pass from reality. The prosecution served up some impressive digital and surveillance footage, all that shredded Lori's narrative. The jury hopefully noticed how it directly contradicted Lori Vallow Daybell's timeline, her version of the shooting and the incident that occurred and unfolded before, during, and after this event. It's all compelling, and it's incredibly hard to dispute. Witness after witness have outlined Lori's erratic and detached behavior. That's going to come back to bite her, I believe. These bits and pieces of testimony thus far are subtle, yet profound. This is kind of a paint-by-numbers case. Here's the lie, here's the weird laugh, here's the sudden victimhood. All of it is bringing out Lori's behavior in the courtroom, and it actually is becoming part of the prosecution's strategy and delivery. But again, not everything was grilled to perfection in day 6. The prosecution, again, this is in my opinion, missed an opportunity to hammer home how disturbingly unbothered Lori Vallow Daybell is through all of this. Perhaps that will come during her closing. Perhaps it will come during the prosecution's closing. They'll talk about her effect, her tone, her lack of empathy. That premium content they left on the tray, in my opinion, and they didn't capitalize on the moment where Lori expressed confusion around who was supposed to subpoena her key witnesses. That could have been turned into a procedural mess pointing at incompetence, but instead, it barely got a nibble. But in the end, Lori did try to have it her way, and for a moment, a tiny moment, she may have gained a little ground with the jury. She may have gained a little ground when she said, "Hey, look, I cooperated." She reminded the jury more than once that she talked to police early on, trying to give the illusion of transparency. And she squeezed out a few moments where investigators admittedly said some texts weren't reviewed or that a few corners might have been cut during the investigation. No, she didn't get the full meal deal, but it might just be enough to get a juror or two to question a few other things. And frankly, that might be all that she needs. And here's where she blew it, in my opinion. It's just another example of why she, the lawyer, has a fool for a client. Her cross-examination continued to be awkward and sarcastic. It's not getting any better. Her logic is missing in action, and instead of building doubt in the state's case, I think she's building doubt in her own sanity. She came off as manipulative. Almost every word dripped with condescension, and she seemed to have this fake spiritual detachment going on. Now, the jury might not know what translated light means, but they certainly know when somebody's being shady. And I think Lori Vallow is being shady. And all of these repetitive, annoying actions seem to be deflating the courtroom every single time she opens her mouth. The judge looks like he's mentally calculating how much longer he's going to let this charade go on. So day 6 of Lori Vallow Daybell's murder trial might just be remembered as the day when the digital truth caught up with Lori's Burger King lies. And if this jury's keeping track of credibility, Lori Vallow just lost some ground, in my opinion. So please take a moment and drop your comments down below. I'd really love to hear from you. I'd like to get your take, and I hope you won't be shy about having some conversation with everybody else that's weighing in. And thanks again for watching Profiling Evil. I really do appreciate your support. I hope you'll check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like audio podcasts, folks, check out Profiling Evil's audio podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. That way, you're going to get true crime whenever you're on the go. And if you're hungry for even more true crime, go over to my website at profilingevil.com. And while you're there, sign up for our digital newsletter, the BOLO. That stands for Be on the Lookout. And the only way you can get the digital newsletter with additional content and cool stuff is by signing up online. And regarding this topic, I hope you'll consider purchasing my book, Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. This isn't just another true crime book. It's a frontline account of my investigation into one of the most disturbing cults in American history. In Deceived, I exposed the manipulative leaders in this group, the coercive control that went on, and the weaponizing of faith. It really frustrates me to think about how these cult leaders take people's intentions that are good and turn them into evil. It shows the chilling impact that cases like this have on innocent followers. The very same kind of dynamics that we're seeing play out in the Daybell case. And that includes Chad Daybell, so it's all one messy mix. Both Zion Society and the Daybell Doomsday cult use scriptural distortion, apocalyptic fear-mongering, and psychological grooming to isolate, radicalize, and ultimately destroy lives. We saw it starting to happen in this thing, and thankfully some people got away from it, hopefully permanently. But the parallels are undeniable. Self-proclaimed prophets twisting religion into weapons. A tight inner circle of believers who are obeying without question, and followers who are treated as collateral damage in the name of whatever their God's name is, will. So whether you're trying to understand how Lori Daybell became convinced that her own children were zombies, or how Chad Daybell rose to become a doomsday messiah in this fringe belief system, Deceived lays the groundwork. And you can get your copy of Deceived signed and delivered anywhere in the United States for free through the website. Or anywhere else in the world, just go to Amazon and you can purchase it there. So thanks for your continued support of Profiling Evil. As I try to work through all the emotion of this crazy case, I find myself more and more heading to the hills to get a little balance in my life. And I want to remind each of you to find some balance in your true crime searching. In fact, get away from it from time to time and watch a puppy film or head to the mountains. Hey, thanks for your support of Profiling Evil. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.